am your host, Yaa Rowana. So many of you may know me as. I recently changed my name, so I'll probably do an episode about that and talking about that more. But today I am here to speak to a really great friend and fellow entrepreneur, Emelda. Okay, Emelda DeCoteau. Anyone who follows Spoken Black Girl knows that I'm a huge fan of both of her platforms and organizations, Pray With Our Feet and When Motherhood Looks Different. Pray With Our Feet podcast, okay, by the way, in case you're looking for another podcast to check out. Um, but today we are here to talk about when motherhood looks different. And we are just following up on our last episode at Healing Entrepreneur when I was talking about my recent ADHD diagnosis. And I was reflecting on, how that has impacted me as a mom. Um, and one way that I've really been navigating this journey is with Emelda's support and Emelda's help. Emelda is a certified mindfulness coach, okay? And she specializes in working with um, neurodivergent moms and kids and families. I know you recently, made the mission more specific, so I was
Yeah,
trying to make sure I got the specific mission down right.
you got it. You got it, girl.
Um, and yeah, I mean, you know that I am like your biggest fan, and I've just been so in awe of the way that you have created really the space that you needed and that you were seeking. Um, and it has become like just such a beautiful business and organization. And you've brought families together. You have um, just gifted us with so many different resources and affirmations and messages just on the daily that support and affirm moms and families. And let me tell you, we need more of that, okay?
Yes.
More of that. There are so many messages out there that moms are internalizing, and not all of it is positive. Some of it is like, building up on the mom guilt, the mom shame, feeling like we have to be doing everything all of the time. And then when you factor in health challenges, it becomes like, very overwhelming. And so, all that to say, you know, your resource and your organization is just such a breath of fresh air to me.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
Let me get into these questions. Well, first of all, say a few words about yourself, Imelda, before I talk too much.
Hey, girl. Hey, first. And thank you so much for having me here. You know that I am equally a huge, huge fan of yours. And I'm so grateful for the work that you do through Spoken Black Girl, really giving voice to Black women writers and all of our different experiences. So thank you for all that you do on the daily. Um, so I am, as you said, the founder of When Motherhood Looks Different. But beyond that, I'm a mom to our beautiful daughter, Nai, who has taught me so much about the importance of seeing with the heart and really expanding empathy and compassion and love and all these things. I am a wife. Next year is going to be our 20-year wedding anniversary, my husband Cass and I. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And, grew up very close to my family. My mom, my dad, my mom and I have the podcast together, Pray With Our Feet, and co-lead the community, and we work together all the time. My brother was my first best friend. And of course, my dad, in loving memory, a few years ago, he passed, but his spirit is still with me, and I know that he's with God. Um, So those things have really been foundational. And of course, I have dear friends like you who are really family to me. And that has helped me so much. And, I also grew up being a person that really delved into different aspects of my creativity, writing. I used to sketch a lot. I thought I wanted to be a fashion designer, but pivoted. Um, yeah, so
First
those are
time
some.
hearing of this.
Yeah. I've had many creative lives, but
Yeah.
no, it's how it is, girl. You're always adjusting and moving and then of course my faith. I know I mentioned pray with our feet, but just deepening my relationship with God for myself, like not necessarily there's so much that we're taught about how we need to show up from a faith standpoint, but just really connecting with God through prayer, journaling, through being in community with other Christians that are passionate about making a difference. Those are some of the aspects of me that make up E. Yeah.
Not to mention the social justice warrior. Okay, we didn't even get onto that, okay? Because E is someone who is really on the ball and knows everything that's going on around the world, all of the conflicts, advocating, um, sharing campaigns, raising money, signing petitions. Um, you are that woman, okay, that I really look up to when it comes to that as well, and also as a mom.
Thank you. I try. I feel like I'm always learning from so many other great activists who are able to be on the ground and those that are also online due to access and disability and all these things. So it's a constant learning experience and I'm thankful for that.
Can you tell us about the journey to starting When Motherhood Looks Different?
Sure. So, it is quite a journey and I'm really glad that you phrased the question in that way because for me, it began when we first suspected that there were some differences with Nye. The speech, she had a few words, but not as many as kids her age. And I felt a deep sense of isolation because of that. It's almost like, you start I'll just use the metaphor of a race. I think of parenthood sometimes in that way because you're going through all these different stages and you start on this race with other parents and kids that are same age and then something happens that slows you down and makes you even have to come out of the race to address what's happening with your body, with your mind. And that was how it felt for me with Nye in the beginning. And we're trying to figure out what it is, and you are the play dates and all of these different things that you just think about for kids get replaced. I mean, we did still do them, but not in the same frequency. It gets replaced with all these therapy sessions and doctor visits and your whole world begins to shift. And I just kept thinking, man, what if there was a space for moms who experience a motherhood journey that looks different? What if there was that space? And I kept thinking about it. The phrase when motherhood looks different was with me for a long time. And I thought originally maybe it was going to be like some kind of devotional series where moms could open up their email and hear from different mothers, different experiences. But that didn't feel all the way right. And I just kind of kept going on with my other business, which was sorry, break. I kept going with my other business, Women Creatives Chat, which was focused on, space for women that are creative artists and having that community. But it still felt like something was missing. And I considered perhaps making When Motherhood Looks Different some kind of like online conference for moms that would be underneath of Women Creatives Chat, but that still felt incomplete. So I said, when Motherhood Looks Different is going to be its own brand, it's going to be its own organization. And I started the effort of, getting a website and well specifically purchasing the domain name and then getting the Instagram page. And I thought it was a great sign when no one had that name. I was like, "You know what, God? This is
'Cause it was for
confirmation."
you, yes.
Yes, that this is for me. And I went to an event in May of that year, which was 2 years ago almost now. And it was a mental health event by a friend of mine, Colleen, who I met through Kess, and his photography work and follow on social media. And she had a mental health circle, and she asked people to talk about what is happening with your mental health, like what challenges are you experiencing. And I opened up about, you know, the parenting journey. And this was when I was 10, so a couple of years ago. And that was the first time that I'd ever done that. I had only ever talked to friends. I mean, you knew, our mutual friend Kayla from Pretty Entrepreneur, and some other close friends knew, but I'd never actually spoke those words aloud. And as soon as I did that, the person next to me, the woman next to me, opened up, and she and her husband about their experience of raising their neurodivergent child. And it was just like a dam broke open for me. And that's why I tell people it's so important to share your story, whether you do that audibly or whether you write it, however you express it is so important to get that out. I'm trying to remember that quote from Maya Angelou about, not carrying that untold story inside of you.
Mm,
And that became the birth of When Motherhood Looks Different. So like that weekend, after I did that, felt this I just felt this strong pull to launch When Motherhood Looks Different on social media. I didn't have the website up. I didn't have everything perfect, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just do it. There's one other part of this story that I want to share. The woman that organized this event, the Green Heart community, Colleen, she said, I'm having a gala, a mental health gala, and I want you to come to it. And then, so, I went by myself, which is another thing. Sometimes we think we have to go with all these people and you need all this support. And sometimes God is just saying, this is for you to be in this moment without other people, for you to stand on your own. And, she said, I'd like you to get up and read some of your poetry. And I mean, not like way ahead of time. I'm sitting at the gala and she asked me to do that.
oh my gosh.
And I was nervous, but I keep a lot of my poetry on my phone. And I'm always of the school of be prepared because you never know when you may be called upon to
You never
speak.
know.
So I just got up there and I spoke about a little bit about my experience and I shared some of my poetry. One of my poems, Wounds Become Wings, which you're familiar with about some of the parenting journey. And all these women came up to me and were like giving me hugs and saying that, I have a friend that has this experience and when is your organization launching? And I'm like, you know what? This is going up.
Yes,
And it was
yeah.
born.
You start getting all of these signs and just like verbal affirmation, like, yes, like this is wanted, this is needed. Yeah, I hope, the entrepreneurship journey, I think, can be really challenging, but it's moments like that where you like look back and you're like, yeah, this is like I'm on the right track. Um, and so thank you for, following that voice, that was like, hey, keep going. Okay, voice of God,
Yes.
whispering, keep going, you know. Sometimes it can be scary, but we have to, keep going. So thank you for doing that, E.
Sure, sure. Happy to do it.
Hmm. So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but let's talk about pivoting, right? So you had one business, Women Creatives Chat, and you were doing that for a while.
Yep, 5
Um,
years.
Wow, yes. And then you pivoted to When Motherhood Looks Different. So can you tell me, or just everyone, like what that process was like? And, was it scary? How did you decide to pivot? Yeah.
Yeah, so I was a while wrestling back and forth with that. Like, should I stop it? I've invested so much work into it. It's 5 years. I already have an audience. Do I want to start from scratch? But the thing for me that really helped me to pivot is I have to be moved and motivated every day by my why. And that why has to be so big that even the challenges that I'm facing, even the obstacles that come, I am driven by that why. And I wasn't there with Women Creatives Chat anymore. And I had to be real and honest with myself. I think we focus sometimes on being comfortable, and you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable in entrepreneurship. And sometimes that looks like moving on in another direction. And I think this as Black women, and particularly Black women who are raised by immigrant parents, which my dad was from Honduras. It's like you don't want to fail, you want to excel, you want to keep going. But at the same time, I don't think that your spirit should die in the process. And my spirit and my heart have to be in my business. I know that business isn't all feelings, but the driving force for me is I want a heart centered business. And my heart just was no longer in Women Creatives Chat, although I felt like the mission of it was great to bring, women together who are creative and have these different events. I felt like it wasn't speaking solely to my experience anymore because of supporting Nye. And I just wanted something that did. And I just said, God, I know you didn't give me when motherhood looks different for it to just sit in me. This has to be out in the world, and I have to pivot.
Okay. Yes. Again, stepping out on faith, I feel like that's so important. And also knowing where your interests are, where your heart is, and we change, we grow, we evolve. And sometimes where what you had your heart in maybe a couple of years ago, there's something else that's, occupying your mind and your life. And like you said, you created a space where you could also express so much of your experience and what you've been going through, and how you are gaining resilience through it all and finding moments of joy
Yeah.
through it all. That's one of my favorite parts about your organization, is that it's not all about the tough times and the challenges. You're also sharing just the joy and the experience as well of like parenting and motherhood. So
Yeah.
thank you,
I
E.
I think I'll just quickly say I think that's so important because a lot of the messaging around raising kids with disabilities or kids that are neurodivergent is that it is challenging and it is hard, and I'm not denying any of that, but I also think it's so important to wake up to those pockets of joy that we often overlook while we're in the midst of the challenges.
So important. Okay. Um, because at the end of the day, like, you have to, lean into gratitude. I know that's another aspect that you often talk about, gratitude for the love that we have, the family that we have. Um, you know, and being determined to go through those challenges together. So, can you tell us about some of the challenges faced by neurodivergent families?
Sure. So there are challenges that we all have in common. I will say, though, that it's important to understand neurodivergent families that are raising kids with high support needs, which means that this might be a child that needs a one to one aid, or perhaps their anxiety is such that you have to really carefully plan family outings. Maybe there's food allergies and or issues that make the day-to-day challenging. Nye would be in that high support needs category right now. And then low support needs, this may be a child that's going to school without an IEP, but they may need like a 504 plan, which gives them certain accommodations. They may be mainstreamed in school, but they could be dealing with bullying or teachers that don't understand. So I think it is important to sort of get that within neurodivergence, as we know, there's a spectrum, and that the needs are different. In terms of some of the challenges that so many of us face, isolation, excuse me, is really right up there because your life has changed, especially if a lot of the parents that you are friends with, or parents that are in your own family, are raising children that are neurodivergent, excuse me, that are not neurodivergent. Your lived experience is just like, it's apples and oranges, for lack of a better way to put this. And it really, you're in this circle almost of care where it's school if the child is going to school, therapy sessions either inside school or outside the school, and then you're just home, you're trying to manage everything. And many people don't understand how challenging that is. So isolation is definitely up there. And then I think overwhelm, to what I was saying earlier about high support needs and low support needs, and sort of what that looks like. You're often managing so many different things. You're a case manager for your child. You're dealing with their doctor and their school and all these different therapists and support staff that help them get through the day or difficult seasons. So there's a lot of overwhelm, that parents like us are dealing with just on a day to day, and even the smallest things like going out on a date with your partner are very difficult to navigate for us. I have not been out. Cass and I haven't been out at night in 10 years, and Nye is 12 right now.
Wow. That's a long time. Okay, I'm about to come to Baltimore and babysit.
Come on,
Seriously.
girl. Yeah, and those are the little things that a lot of people don't think about. Like, I was talking to one of my friends, a dear friend who has been there from the beginning, Shell, and this was like several months ago now, but I was talking about the mommy groups and how I never was able to really be in them. We started doing that initially, but then as the language barrier grew for Nye and we were trying to work with her, that just fell to the wayside. So you don't have a lot of times mom friends, or the mom friends that you do have are in some of the same groups that you're in online trying to look for solutions for their kid. And by the time you finish looking for the solutions, like, your energy to be social is just, I mean, you have it and you do connect at times when you can, but it's just not the same. So I think that's something that's really important, the way that your friendships shift. And you find that there are some people who can stay with you and who can be there and who will check in and ask how you are, and then other people that won't. And there's a grief around that, right? The other thing is the fatigue. When a parent that's raising a child with disabilities, says that they're tired, it's not the normal tired. I mean, you could be that parent when they're saying that to you, that mom could have been up for days on end, the child won't go to sleep, or they could have been dealing with issues with the school, and the school is calling you constantly. Like, there's so many factors. And then the last thing I would say is that it's very difficult to take care of yourself. And that was one of the things that led me to start this practice of well being anchors in the morning and in the evening. And quite frankly, I really could not do that until now I went to school. So I understand the moms that have children that are small, that are under the age of 5, that may not be in school, or even very important for people to understand that if you have a friend that has a neurodivergent child that's in your life, or a family member, just check in with them, just ask, hey, is there anything I can do to support you? Or how are you? How are you feeling, really? And just let them know they don't have to give you the standard, I'm fine, like, that you're really going to listen to them. You have done that so many times, and thank you, because it's rare that people do that. I think they just see you with this super mom cape on and think that you're fine and okay, like, they got the diagnosis and that's what their life is and that's it. And the caregiver needs care too. So do what you can where you are to just genuinely check in with people because you may really be making their day.
Yes, I think that's so important to note. So often I think a lot of folks, we go through life on autopilot, and also assume that your norm is everyone else's norm. Maybe you want to believe that your friend is okay, just, you love them, you want to believe they're okay, but it's always worth it to just take a moment to check in with folks and where they're at and what their capacity is, because everybody's not, you know, dealing with the same challenges or level of challenges. So I think that that's a really important part, especially as, you know, the conversation around, more people are discovering like, oh, hey, maybe like I'm neurodivergent, or I'm thinking like maybe my child is neurodivergent. I love that you talked about there is like a spectrum to things, um, and not everyone is having the same experience. That's one of the things that I think is most challenging when we're talking about like, helping neurodivergent like kids and moms, is just like everyone's having, their own kind of unique experiences. There are some things, you know, different diagnoses, I'm deal with ADHD. There's like autism and of course, different mental illnesses that, there are so many different ways that you can be identifying as neurodivergent. So I just think that's very important to point out,
Yeah.
not to
And
generalize any experience.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say, I love that you spoke to capacity because I think that's something that gets overlooked a lot. We think that other people have the same capacity, especially when it comes to parenting that we do, and just not realizing also sometimes when you call your friend and or text them and they don't respond right away, sometimes it's read as being rude when it's really that they just don't even have the capacity to
Mm.
message you back.
Yep, yep. Talk about that because listen, I I think at the end of the day, what we're talking about is like giving ourselves and other people grace. Sometimes the harder you are on yourself, the harder you are on other people, like your expectations for yourself, you're projecting to other people. And listen, we need to be a little bit kinder to ourselves and, softer with ourselves. And then also realize, um, other people have their own needs and their own lives and their own things that they're going through. And, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't, want to talk to you, or, they're just not able to show up at that moment. Another great thing is like just communication, okay? Because I feel like a lot of times, I don't know if like people didn't gain the skills, or I mean, I'm learning too, okay, but it's like so much could be cleared up by, you just really asking, "Hey, what's going on?" instead of assuming, you know? Um, but again, how does the saying go? Others can only meet you as deeply as they've like met themselves. So I
Mm.
think that just goes for so many things. But let's not go too off track because I feel like I'm already way off track.
No, I'm sorry.
Are there any lessons that you've learned being both a mom and an entrepreneur that you want to share? And what has this journey taught you?
So number one is remain rooted in faith, to really stay connected to God because it's not all up to me. And I don't have control over so much. I don't know when I wake up if Nye is going to be dealing with anxiety. I'm not sure if something is going to trigger her, meaning if we're going to be in a space and there's going to be food that she's not able to eat due to allergies, we're dairy free, soy free, gluten free. I don't know so many things, so I have to trust in God. And I think that in some ways, the motherhood journey and the entrepreneurship journey are similar because you don't know how it's going to turn out. You just have to carry the faith within your heart, within your spirit. You have a vision, you see a purpose, but you're not going to be able to map it out from point A to point B even, let alone from point A to point Z. So for me, trusting in God has been absolutely essential, and that looks like
Mm.
time in the morning with my devotionals. It looks like reading scripture, but not even so much only reading it and walking away, but it's carrying the verses of scripture within my heart space. I speak Jeremiah 29:11 over Nye so often, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans not to harm you, but plans to give you hope and a future. And I think it's important to also speak that over our businesses because it feels like there's so many forces, not feels like there are, because we're in a system that is giving us multiple points of oppression as Black women, if you're neurodivergent, so many things coming against us, but God says that I have hope for you. I have a future for you, no matter what it looks like. So the faith has been very important. There's another verse of scripture, Matthew 28:20, that talks about how God is with us always, even until the end of the age. So that means if people walk away from me, that means if this shifts in the business realm and the entrepreneurship realm, if something changes with my child, and the ways that I can show up to support them, it doesn't matter because God is with me and is going to see me through it. I know there's that quote that I've seen on social media about how if God brings you to it, you're going to be brought through it. So for me, that has been absolutely critical, just leaning into that faith, carrying those words of affirmation with me every day, speaking them when I feel the nervousness come up, when I feel the tension come up. There have been so many times when I have walked out of doctor's offices or gotten off of calls with people that I felt like wrote nigh off. And I just kept saying Jeremiah 29:11. You have plans for her. You have hope for her. You have a future for her, no matter what the world says. And the same thing when it comes to our businesses and our entrepreneurship ventures, because a lot of times other people can't see it. And you're describing it to them, you're excited, you're hyped up, and they're just looking at you with this blank stare. And it's just like, God, I'm going to go on anyway. So that is the cornerstone for me.
Snap, snap to that. Okay, can you tell she's a poet, folks? Because the way you just like wove those two things, those two topics together was so beautiful. I couldn't agree more. You know, you don't know what's around the bend, right? But you have to have faith. You have to have faith that this purpose was given to you for a reason. This mission was given to you for a reason. Much like motherhood, right? And you know what's so funny? E was also in Motherhood the magazine. And lately I've just been thinking like, wow, this magazine is just like real motherhood because it's like, things take time. Things are taking time. Things are happening at different times. It's evolving. It's growing. I'm like doing different collaborations with the contributors and it's just like, motherhood is never just like a one and done kind of thing. It's just like it continues, okay?
Yes.
And um, so yeah, I love it. I love it. Um, let's see. So you already touched on my one of my questions was about faith and your faith through this journey. And so thank you for just letting us know like how important faith is to the journey, both for motherhood and entrepreneurship, always believing Um, you know, there are greater plans for your child, you know. Say it again, E. Say it again. Not to yes, go ahead.
Yeah, God has a purpose and a plan for every person that is on this planet, for all life that's on this planet. And just carry that with you. I want to share a quick story. I was in mom's organic market where we take Nai all the time. That's one of her favorite places. And I was trying to get her in the cart and she was pulling away from me a little bit. This was a couple of years ago. And she bumped up against this woman and she looked at me and she said, because I had said, "Oh, I'm sorry, apologies. I'm just trying to get her back in the cart." And she said, "Don't apologize. God got that baby here for a reason. That baby is here for a reason."
Yeah.
And there's one other thing that I want to share. When I just said, when I'm just repeating and thinking about what she had sowed into my spirit that day. Nye loves music. And a lot of the songs that she really connects with are inspirational. And there's a song by a Christian group called Here for a Reason. And that just, I sat with what that woman said. And Nye always asks to hear that. And it's just like a beautiful affirmation and reminder for all of us that your voice matters, your truth matters, what you create and put out into the world matters, and whether you have an audience of millions, thousands, or close friends, it's relevant,
Yes.
and you have a right to express all that's on your heart.
Yes. Okay. Wow, that's a really great that just hit me. You know, you have a right to express all that is on your heart. I feel like sometimes, especially like in the social media age, everyone's thinking about how you're going to be perceived after you express, right? But it's like the expressing is for you, right? And another thing that I heard this week was, creative expression as praise, praise to God, like thinking about every time you're writing something, every time you're, painting or sketching or whatever, uh, as an act of worship, I think is also a really beautiful and very motivating sentiment. So, yes,
Yay.
all that to
I
say,
love that.
speak that truth. Yes.
Love that.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so Imelda, you have so many resources and different initiatives that you're working on for When Motherhood Looks Different. So, can you tell the people about how we can find some of your resources and connect with you?
Sure. So our website is a great spot to do that. And it's www. And I know you'll put this in the show notes, wmldllc.com. And I have a resource page on there, and it has a couple of different bits of information. So, first, you'll find podcasts, you'll find books that speak to the experience of either raising a neurodivergent child, moms that have their own health issues. I need to actually add some more now that I'm talking to you that are specifically for moms that are neurodivergent themselves. Um, so that's one part of the resources that are on the website. I also have caregiver affirmations that you can download. You don't have to put in your email address to do that. You can just be right on the website and listen to those caregiver affirmations because I feel that it's so important for us to continue to sow back into us. There's also a meditation on there for moms that are raising neurodivergent kids. And it really speaks to the fact that, I see you. I see you as a mom because I'm on this journey too. And some of the other resources on the site are specific organizations like Autism in Black, TACA, which is another autism organization that focuses on help around biomedical issues and support in that way. And they have a Facebook page. And there are about 11 organizations on there that you can click on and tap into. There's Parent to Parent USA. that will connect you to another parent as a mentor. So that's a good space to start. And also, you mentioned about social media. I share resources on in our social media posts as well, in in regard to books and tips from my own life experience. Like I just put up something about taking Nai to the Festival of Trees and some of the things that we helped her to do before we went so she would be more regulated. So I'm always sharing different tips on our Instagram page, and then I created a freebie that you can download from our When Motherhood Looks Different store, which is strategies to help you with calm when your kid has a challenging day. And just a quick note on that When Motherhood Looks Different store. Right now, it includes packages for mindful mama coaching, but I'm working to get the digital store up by January of 2025. So stay tuned for that. And then I will be restarting our workshops, well-being workshops in February.
Yes. I'm looking forward to all of that.
Mhm.
Um, Folks, if you don't already know, please connect with Emelda and When Motherhood Looks Different and the Pray with Our Feet podcast. All of it is very necessary, okay? Um, and yeah, thank you so much, E, for joining me. And I bet that this isn't going to be our last conversation because I could just, we already know that we like to have our conversations. But I can just see us following up on this and so many different topics that we can go into. So thank you for being here with me, E.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so honored that you asked me. And again, thank you for all that you're doing to empower and support Black women writers and creatives.
You're welcome. That's my passion and where I feel like I'm so grateful that God has like enlightened this purpose for me. Um, so yeah, thank you for being part of that. Like, now I have like some of the most amazing friends, amazing, people in my life because of this. So it's not an
Yes.
issue.
You were saying to me earlier about thank you for answering the call, and thank you for continuing to answer the call, because I know that the work isn't easy. But just for anyone who's listening, when you show up in your purpose, God will always bring the people and the resources and the support that you need if you are just faithful to that mission and to that purpose that's in your heart.
Yes, yes. And, stay in community because I feel like that's a really, really important part of it because I was always around people who would remind me of, you know, just how big and important and just bigger than, some of the internal struggles that I might be having personally, this mission is bigger. And I feel like it's the same way with you, E, and your work. It's like, but you have to stay with people who see you and, will remind you of the divinity within you, right? So, okay, stay in community. All right. Um, all right. So we're gonna wrap up. Thank you so much, E.
You're welcome. Thanks.